Hi, I'm Dylan Paris. This is Ultra Choice, and it's been a little bit since I made one of these, so I'm excited to make a new video with my new setup. I won't spend too much time talking about it. I'll do a different video for that, but got a new camera, got a new laptop I'm going to use to edit this, and I'm really stoked about it. Anyway, if you've seen the thumbnail and the title for this video, then you know what it's about. I sold a 2018 iPad Pro 11-inch model for a 2019 iPad Mini, or the iPad Mini 5. In this video I'm going to tell you why. Before I get started, consider liking and subscribing, but you know how YouTube works. Let's do this. Okay, so you might be wondering, why would anyone sell a super powerful iPad Pro and trade it, essentially, to get an iPad Mini? Well, there's a couple of reasons. The first one is I just wasn't using the iPad Pro anymore. At least not the way I used to. See, a big part of why I used the iPad was because I was leaving my house a lot. I was in a lot of situations where it was really nice to have the ability to do high-level music production and video editing on the go on a small device. Given the current context that we're in now, being, the mass pandemic and quarantine, I find myself not really needing that kind of power and that kind of device anymore. I started doing a lot more work on my desktop, and I realized I really did like Ableton and I really like desktop editing software, but I really missed Final Cut, and so I ended up purchasing a MacBook Pro, which I'm going to make a different video about, but that will really become my primary editing device. Along with that, Ableton really became where I'm doing all my music again, and I just realized the iPad wasn't going to be my primary machine the way it had been. That being said, I didn't want to not have an iPad. So I did some research. I looked at the iPad Air, I looked at the iPad, the 10-inch or 10.5-inch model. I looked at older iPad Pros, and then I realized I really had never tried an iPad Mini. The iPad Mini is a device that I'd actually kind of ignored throughout its lifespan. Especially early on, the Mini had a worse screen, it was a weaker machine, but at this point it's the same processor as the one in the new Air. It is, I believe, I want to say a generation behind the iPad Pro 2018 model, or maybe it's just missing an X. It might just be a 12 instead of a 12X. I'll put that right here. It is still a really potent machine. I've been pleasantly surprised by the power of this thing, and it has a killer feature that the Pro iPad doesn't, which is right here, a headphone jack. Wow. Given that most of the Pro workflow that I am aware of on the iPad revolves around audio, it still blows my mind that Apple thought it was okay to remove the headphone jack from their Pro iPad. But I digress. It doesn't bother me anymore because I don't have one. I have the iPad Mini. Now, what are the downsides to switching to the iPad Mini? I think there are a couple of kind of obvious ones. I've got big old bezels again. I haven't had bezels on an iPad in a long time. They're visible, but I actually don't feel that distracted by them. It helps that the screen is really edge to edge on the sides, and then you can view the bezels as more of like a place to put your hand, which can be nice. You also get Touch ID with the bezels, which is nice. I kind of missed it. Face ID can be really great. I love it on my phone, and there are times where I really enjoyed it on the iPad, but Touch ID is cool too. I do miss tap to wake. It's not on here. Can't tap to wake. And I think that's partly because you don't have Face ID. Normally you would tap and then wake it up with your face, unlock it on an iPad Pro. On the iPad Mini, it's more of a, there you go. It's not bad. You can put up to 5 fingers on there, so I've got both thumbs, both index fingers, I'm good. You know how Touch ID works. Anyway, it also has less RAM. This isn't really a wall I've run into, but it's worth noting that I believe it has 3 gigabytes, whereas the Pro I had 4 gigabytes. For the type of work I'm doing, that's not really an issue. If I was gonna try to do a lot of LumaFusion editing on here, I could imagine I might see issues, but I was able to edit 4K video in LumaFusion on the 2018 iPad, the 9.7-inch model, which was definitely weaker than this, so I'm sure this thing could edit 4K video on the go if I wanted to. So what are the big pluses besides the headphone jack? I actually really like the size. This thing is just really portable. It's convenient to take around. I enjoy using it. It's a lot like just a book, basically. It's small, but it's powerful. I've gotten into Hearthstone, and this is a really nice Hearthstone device. You get all the benefits of a normal iPad, right? You get nice tablet apps, which don't really exist in any other ecosystem, but you get them in a package that is so much more condensed than I'm used to. It has the same resolution, I believe, as the iPad Air, but the pixel density is higher because they just squish it. That's a pro and a con, honestly. There are some apps that just feel like they were designed for a bigger screen. Hearthstone actually feels a little small, just the details of everything are a little small, but that's a game designed to scale from phones all the way to like desktop PCs, so it's totally playable. It's totally good. It's just something you might notice if you're coming from a larger iPad. Should you do this? Should you get rid of an iPad Pro and get an iPad mini? That is an interesting question. It really depends on what you're doing with the iPad and if you are enjoying that workflow. If you love everything about your iPad Pro, then probably not. It is a really cool device. I think the new one doesn't look that much better than the one I had, but either of those machines are great if you want more of a workhorse or a larger surface to work with. If you are interested in gaming on an iPad, I actually like this more. It's a condensed screen. It's bigger than a Nintendo Switch screen, but it has that feeling of like a dedicated handheld gaming device, whereas the iPad feels a little more unwieldy, the Pro, I mean. If you like to use your tablet, your iPad for browsing and consumption of content, in a lot of ways this is a great device for that. There are a couple of caveats though, and I think the biggest one is the speakers. The speakers on the iPad Pro are awesome. There's like 4 of them, and they automatically adjust to how you rotate the device, and I really enjoyed using them, and I really miss them on this. You know, this one only has 2 bottom firing speakers, and you really know where they are at any given time, depending on how you've rotated it. For me, this isn't a huge deal. I have the AirPods Pro, which I maybe we'll make a video about, but so many people have made videos about them, I just don't know if my 2 cents really matter. But I will say that having the AirPods means that any audio output issues with this are kind of null. And when it comes to music production, I really wouldn't use speakers anyway. I would just use the headphone jack, which the Pro doesn't have. So that's also a huge plus. Can you do serious work with this? Absolutely. I used Cord Gadget on here the other day. I plugged in a giant keyboard, and it was almost like an old workstation keyboard, if you've seen those, where they have a little screen on them and they're like a giant keyboard, and you can cue up different sounds and make stuff, full tracks on a giant keyboard. It was a lot like that, except probably more powerful in a lot of ways because Cord Gadget is such a beast mode app. Highly recommend it, and I'm gonna make some more videos using this and Cord Gadget. My most popular video ever is just me messing around with Cord Gadget and the Nano Key Studio, which I still have. So I'm gonna make a video using this and the Nano Key Studio to show you how cool a tiny setup can be with the iPad mini and the Nano Key for music production. You can also use on-screen touch controls, and I actually find those to be totally useful too. A scenario in which it actually might be more beneficial to get a mini instead of an iPad Pro is if you're starting from where I'm going, which is owning a solid, powerful MacBook and wanting an iPad. There's a lot of crossover nowadays between what a MacBook Pro can do and what an iPad Pro can do. They are absolutely different machines. There are absolutely different Pro workflows that are only doable on Mac, especially coding stuff. It's just not doable on the iPad. But if you do video editing or photo manipulation or music production, although the apps aren't the same, there are similarities, and you can start to get into a murky area where you might choose to go iPad over MacBook. I did that. I have a video about it. I'll link it below. I actually have a couple because I've had a lot of experiences with it, and I went back and forth on it a lot. Obviously, I ended up with selling the iPad Pro and getting a MacBook, which is kind of funny if you've watched my channel. But I digress. If you already have a MacBook Pro, or a desktop that you use all the time, then I think an iPad mini is a really great device to add to your ecosystem. It gives you a bunch of functionality you're not gonna have with a desktop or with just a MacBook Pro. You get Apple Pencil functionality with this. It's the 1st gen Pencil, but it works. You have the entire suite of iPad apps for creativity, for consumption, for music production. You can add this as an Ableton Link module to a larger setup of music production. Sirens. Apps like Cord Gadget are really awesome, super powerful, and you can export from Gadget into Ableton, which is awesome because that's my DAW of choice. So this still has a huge functionality. I have multiple songs on the album I'm working on that were made on iPad. Not this one, but they do run on this one, which means I could have made them on this one, and I will make others on this one. Should you buy an iPad mini, and should you sell an iPad Pro to get one? I don't know. It really depends. If you find yourself thinking that the iPad Pro is too big, that you don't use it for everything you thought it would, then I will let you know you can make some serious cash and get an iPad. The other reason I sold it is because I wanted to get the MacBook. And so when I sold my iPad Pro, I made $800. I was able to buy this for $330 on sale at Best Buy, and that left me with $470 I was able to put towards the MacBook Pro. Depending on where you want to allocate your funds and what kind of financial situation you might be in, that is also a great way to get some extra cash and still have an iPad, if that's the situation you're in. So yeah, I sold my iPad Pro, the iPad I've used for most of the videos in my channel, and I'm starting fresh with a new setup I'll dive into. I got the MacBook Pro 16, the step up from the base, so the i9 8-core, 1 terabyte, 16 gigs of RAM, which, you know, not ideal, but the 5500M, the 4 gigabyte model, I believe, for the graphics card. It is a beast. I am just getting it set up, but I'm gonna do a bunch of videos with it. From here on out, I'll be editing my videos in Final Cut using that. Filming on my Lumix G85, which I'm very excited to have. I actually had one of these a little bit last year, and then went down a whole rabbit hole of trying to do other things and use other cameras, but I'm really excited to be back with the G85. It is a killer workhorse camera. And yeah, you know, it's a bit of a new era for the channel. I'm really excited about what the future holds, and I hope you stick around, subscribe, and see what I do. All right, catch you next time. Peace.